And I'd like to explain that term a little bit, white violence, because you might hear it and it might sound a certain way or a different way or something, and I want to make sure there's no confusion about what I mean. White violence is not just white people acting violent. That's not what we're here to discuss tonight. For the purposes of this discussion, I'm using the term white violence to describe a specific category of violence. Namely, it refers to acts of violence committed for the purpose of maintaining the global system of white supremacy. This can include police violence, such as the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but police violence is just a part of a much larger web of violence and control that ranges from very large scales to very small ones. The larger scale systems of white violence include the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, and any of the numerous white supremacy hate groups that target non-white people. On a small scale, it can include acts such as hate crimes, lone wolf attacks like Dylan Roof, and people calling the police as a means of aggression, see Amy Cooper. Ultimately, all ethnicities commit acts of violence. That is a human universal. And in no way do white people have a monopoly on violent acts. But violence becomes white violence when it strengthens and reinforces the racist systems that target non-white people and groups. I should also add that not all white violence is necessarily white people acting violently toward black people or other people of color. In a sense, the ethnicity of the individual isn't very important. You can have a non-white individual committing acts of white violence toward white people or other non-white people. For example, if a black police officer uses rubber bullets against a group of peaceful white protesters, as we recently saw in DC, that would be an act of white violence on the part of the officer by supporting racist police and attacking anti-racist white supremacy groups. Again, white violence is identified not by the ethnicity of the individual, but rather by the racist system it empowers. And white violence is much bigger than our police system here in the US. It is a global system of racialized control and violence. And all of this led me to coordinate this event tonight, the W Word, a conversation on white violence and white action. So the questions I would like for you to think about are, how can you as a white person work to understand the scope of this vast problem? And what steps can you take to diminish its power?